Well, hello and welcome everyone. My name is Jonathan McCrea. It's Science Week. Welcome to the Festival of Farming and Food. I'll be your host for this, our final program in the series, and I hope you've been enjoying them. Teagasc have really enjoyed putting on all of these events and giving you a taste of the sort of research that we're doing at the moment. I would like to say that you are all very welcome. If you would like a shout out and say hello, we're going to be talking about science that comes from Ashtown Research Centre today. So if you're nearby or if you're watching at home, let us know. Particular shout out to Moonshore Mairead and Rang 6 at Skull Seachtar Lake, Pelletstown, Educate Together, and St. Patrick's in Diswell's Town. I know you guys are all very close to Ashtown, so you're all very welcome, and thanks very much for joining our live stream. This is a live event that is free with thanks to Teagasc and Science Foundation Ireland funding. So you can enjoy these and lots of other programs that we've put on the Science Week website, or you can check out teagasc.ie for all of the previous videos that we've been putting on. If you enjoy this, we'd love you to take part in a survey at the end of this. It's really important that we get an idea of how we're putting this programming on and what it feels like to you. If you're enjoying it, do let us know. We'd love you to take part in this, in the survey that will be emailed to you after this. So thanks very much for those who've already done that. If you'd like to ask questions or send us photographs, you can do so to scienceweek@teagasc.ie, or you can tweet us with the hashtag FestFarmFood or Science Week. And now, as I say, the videos and stories that we're going to be hearing today are from the Teagasc Ashtown Research Centre, which is near Phoenix Park, just off the M50. In this green and leafy campus, not far from the heart of Dublin, we're going to meet some Teagasc scientists who are going to be looking at lots of different things like cutting edge research, development and innovation to support the Irish food and horticultural industries. So we're going to find out what our food might look like in the future. I will hear about some different foods that might be added to our diet. We'll hear about the problems facing food growers and what influences our food choices. If you would like to comment or ask questions, you can do so in the Zoom Q&A that's just underneath this video, or you can also do that on Twitter as well using the hashtag FestFarmFood. In a few minutes' time, we'll be meeting the scientists behind these videos so we can put your questions to them and delve a little bit deeper into the science. But first, let's hear about some of the science that's coming out of Ashtown Research Centre.
Your food travels on a journey from the farm to your fork. The direction of this journey is changing through innovative research and development. This is Teagasc Ashtown Research Centre, and we'd like to show you some of those new developments. Welcome to A Taste of the Future. The journey of many foods starts with plants, but if they get sick, who do you call?
It looks serious.
Very serious.
So, just like people, plants get sick too. My name is Brian McGuinness, and I'm a plant pathologist with Teagasc at the Ashtown Research Centre. Plants get the same types of diseases as people, like viruses, fungal infections, and even bacterial infections. A grower is in a constant battle with these diseases, and if left unchecked, they could lose their entire crop. In the Ashtown Plant Clinic, we get hundreds of samples every single year. And just like medical doctors, we try to diagnose these diseases. Once we know what the problem is, we know how to treat the problem. The biggest industry in horticulture in Ireland is the mushroom industry. Let me show you how we grow them. Welcome to the Ashtown Mushroom Research Unit. Firstly, let's dispel some myths. Mushrooms don't have to be grown in the dark. They can be grown in the light or the dark. They don't care. Fungi don't have chlorophyll like plants. So they get their nutrition from soil or compost. In commercial industry, small grains of rye are coated with mycelium, and these grains of rye are mixed with the compost and allowed to grow through the compost at warm temperatures. We layer a moisture-rich peat over the compost, and after about a week at warm temperatures, we drop the temperature, fooling the fungus into thinking that it's autumn. The fungus then produces the mushroom, which are picked by hand. Mushrooms are highly nutritious foods. They contain just as much minerals and vitamins as many common vegetables like spinach, broccoli, or carrots. Our tastes are changing, and we're looking to the future by trying new exotic species of mushrooms, not just the white button mushroom that you commonly find in the shops. Next time you're in the shops, keep an eye out for mushrooms like shiitake or oyster mushroom, and don't be afraid to give them a try. You might actually be surprised at how good they taste.
For the next part of our journey, we take to the air and look at the crucial role that insects play in the story of our food.
It is estimated that there are 10 quintillion, which is 10 with 18 zeros, or 1,000,000 trillion insects on planet Earth. Over 80% of the animal species described are insects, and it is arguable that they are the most important class of animal on the planet. We all know that insects such as bees, moths, beetles pollinate some plants, but they're also critical to breaking down organic matter and recycling that into the environment, while also providing a food source for many other species. However, some insects want to eat the same crops that we want to eat. My name is Michael Gaffney, and I'm an entomologist with Teagasc here at the Ashtown Food Research Centre. An entomologist is somebody who studies insects, and my job is to study insects and learn how they behave. So by better understanding their behavior, we can design ways of protecting our crops while also protecting the millions and millions of insects which do no damage to our food crops. Insects can damage our crops in many ways. They can transmit plant viruses they carry in their saliva. The larvae of some moths can strip all the leaves from a cabbage plant in only a few days, while some insects can eat the roots of plants, causing them to wither and die. So, in order to better control insects, we need to better understand their behavior, when they arrive into crops, but also to better understand when beneficial species, which predate or parasitize pests, are active. We're also learning that we can use beneficial species in protecting our crops, such as using insect-killing nematodes and fungi to replace more traditional pesticides. To better understand their behavior, we use various trapping techniques. Some are based on sticky traps using different colors. Some are based on pheromones, which are smells that insects are attracted to. And some, such as this suction tower, which directly sample flying insects from the air. Towers such as this can be adjusted to different heights to sample for different insects. But we're particularly interested in pests like aphids, which fly in and out of crops, carrying different plant viruses in their saliva, feeding and multiplying rapidly into huge populations. So, by better understanding insect behavior, we can better protect the trillions and trillions of insects we depend upon to keep our ecosystem healthy and our food production systems functioning.
As you just saw, insects can be a serious problem for the food industry, but they can also be a solution for two big problems in our society: how to feed an increasing global population and how to make a better use of our resources. Hi, my name is Carlos Alvarez. I'm a research officer working here in Ashtown, Teagasc, in the Department of Food Quality and Sensory Science. As you all know, the global population is increasing, and we need to provide proteins for all of us. Also, as you might know as well, the food waste is increasing and increasing over time. We can start to solve these big problems with help of these small protein factories. They can be fed with the food that we don't want, or is just not okay for us to eat. Once they are ready to be harvested, insect contains all the essential amino acids we need in our diet, and also have a high protein content. They can be processed like any other type of food. In spite of the benefits of using insects as a food, in Europe, it is still very much in its infancy. Would you like to have a roasted cricket snack when watching a movie? Probably not. However, more than 2 billion people already have insects on their diets on a regular basis. Some cultures even consider them as a delicacy for special occasions. In our project, we're fully aware about this jack factor, and we're working on different solutions to overcome it. Our goal is to use insect proteins as ingredients in different products that might appeal to the European consumer. That could be burgers, snack, or protein bars. After all, your body doesn't care where the proteins come from, so why should you?
You probably think seaweed, or algae as scientists call it, is just that slimy stuff washed up on the beach. But there are well-documented health benefits to algae, so our researchers are investigating new possible uses for these primitive plants in our food.
The majority of life on Earth is aquatic, and marine species outnumber those on land. In fact, an incredible 94% of the Earth's living species exist within the oceans. These species are largely underexplored as a source of food. Hi, my name is Maria Hayes, and I'm a natural products chemist here at the Food Biosciences Department, Teagasc, Ashtown. Seaweeds and tiny relatives, known as microalgae, are rich in everyday nutrients, including proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and fibre. We need these in our diet to remain healthy and happy. We look at measuring these nutrients and making them into everyday foods like breads, pastas, dairies, and snacks to help feed the growing global population. Marine resources have additional benefits, however. Due to the harsh conditions of the marine environment in which seaweeds and microalgae grow, they have developed specific defense mechanisms to stay healthy. These differ from those of plants and animals found on land. As a natural products chemist, I look at developing methods to extract these molecules and deliver them to people and animals to increase the health benefits of our foods and feeds. Molecules that we have identified here already can add heart health benefits to food and can help prevent diseases such as diabetes and obesity. One example of marine molecules that can be used in food are fluorotannins. These molecules are found only in brown seaweeds, like the ones you see on the beaches of Ireland. The extraction of these tannins is straightforward. This purified extract can be used to prevent the growth of bad bacteria and ensure food safety. Fluorotannins can also reduce high blood pressure. In animals, they can help prevent infection with fluke worms, particularly in cattle. We are also looking at seaweed molecules to help reduce methane emissions from cows, sheep, and cattle. This is really important for Irish agricultural production, as it will help to protect our environment from harmful greenhouse gas emissions.
Our food story now moves from your plate to your mouth as we ask, how do we taste our food? The answer isn't as easy as you might think.
You might know that we all have 5 senses, but did you know that we unconsciously use all of those senses when we eat or drink? My name is Carol Griffin, and I work here in Teagasc Food Research Centre, Ashtown, in sensory analysis. Sensory analysis is used to capture and interpret how people respond to food and drink. Most people think it's just the taste or flavour of foods that we're judging, but we really are actually using all of our senses. How a food looks will help us decide if we want to try it. It can give us clues as to what we're actually likely to experience when we do eat the food. For example, we expect a yellow ice cream to taste lemony. Sounds like the fizz when opening a soft drink or the snap of a biscuit tell us they're likely to be fresh and lovely to eat, even before we put them into our mouths. The texture and shape of food are also really important. When the shape of some chocolate bars were changed a few years ago, loyal customers thought the company had changed the recipe. The chocolate actually melted differently because of the new shape, which most likely gave a slightly different flavour. We can use sensory analysis to help food businesses to develop successful product in 2 very different ways. The first is by recruiting regular consumers of the product to taste the different foods or drinks and give their opinion of how much they like the products, which do they prefer, would they buy them, those kind of questions. Trained panels are also used to help companies to develop or redesign food and drink. And these people have been tested to make sure that they have really good senses of smell, taste, and flavour recognition. And then they're trained even further to be really good at describing and evaluating all kinds of foods. Would you like to work as a chocolate or a steak taster? Or maybe try those mealworms that Carla showed us earlier. Might be in the future for all of us.
We get a lot of mixed messages about what we should eat, but the health of our bodies and the health of our planet depends on all of us making better choices. To finish our story, let's find out how to aim for a diet that's nutritious, healthy, and sustainable.
Can our planet and our bodies become healthier by making the right food choices? Yes, but it requires a balance of both healthy and sustainable food choices. I'm Dr. Sinead McCarthy, a nutritionist from the Teagasc Food Research Centre in Ashtown, Dublin. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about sustainable diets. We're all very familiar with the food pyramid and which foods we should eat lots of, such as fruit and vegetables at the bottom of the food pyramid, and which foods we should limit, like the treats at the top of the food pyramid. These recommendations from the food pyramid guide us as a population on how to make healthy food choices. And these healthy food choices prevents us from developing illnesses associated with a poor diet, such as heart disease. However, not only do we need to make these food choices for our personal health, but now we also need to make these food choices for the health of our planet as well. We can do this using the carbon footprint. So, what is the carbon footprint of a food and how do we calculate it? A food's carbon footprint is the greenhouse gas emissions associated from growing, rearing, farming, processing, transporting, storing, cooking, and disposing of the food we eat, every single aspect of food production. So, we calculate the carbon cost of every one of these stages of the food production and create a total carbon cost of the foods per kilogram. Sustainable diets can be hard to define because not all healthy foods have a low carbon footprint, and not all foods with a high carbon footprint are necessarily unhealthy. So, let's try a little experiment together and see if you can pick a meal that is healthy and sustainable. I'm going to present you with a menu option and pick your favourite foods or the foods you might think have the lowest carbon footprint or a combination of health and carbon footprint. Here are your choices. For your beverage, you can have either a glass of milk or a glass of cola. For your main meal, choose either a cheese pizza or bolognese. And then for a snack, choose either cheese or chocolate. So, have you made your food choices? Are you happy with the choice you made? Let's take a look at the carbon footprint and the calories of some of these options. If you followed the recommendations on the food pyramid and chose milk, bolognese and cheese, you'll have a carbon footprint of 4.8 kilos of CO2 for this meal. And you'll also have consumed 769 calories. If you reached more so for the top shelf of the food pyramid and chose cola, pizza and chocolate, the meal will amount to a carbon footprint of 1.8 kilos of CO2. And for this meal, you'll have consumed 876 calories. So, this is where it gets a little bit complicated because one option has a lower carbon footprint while the other option has higher calories. If we choose the milk, bolognese and cheese option, then we generate a higher carbon footprint, but we consume less calories. The cola, pizza and chocolate option will have nearly 3 kilos less of carbon, but we also consume over 100 calories more with this option. Now, we all enjoy our treats from time to time, but the average person would need to walk for nearly 30 minutes to burn off the extra 100 calories if we choose the cola, pizza and chocolate option. So, can we make food choices that are both healthy and sustainable and make them a little bit easier to achieve? And what if I told you that being more sustainable could actually save you some money in the long run? Well, there are some small changes we can easily make every day that'll have a big impact on our pocket, on our planet, and on our personal health. Planning is a good place to start. If you decide ahead of time the meals you plan to make over the week, think about healthy and sustainable options and then make a shopping list. It's a really good start. With a shopping list in our hand or on a phone app, we're less likely to make impulsive food choices. This will also help us save a little bit of money when we're at the supermarket. We must try much harder to reduce our food waste. Who's guilty of buying foods that end up going out of date, never eaten, and ultimately into the bin? On average, approximately 1/3 of our food ends up as waste. Think about all the energy and cost gone into every stage of producing that food, and it never gets used. Again, our meal planning and shopping list will help us to minimise the waste. That way, we don't waste our money on food waste either. Let's talk leftovers. They don't have to go in the bin either. Think of useful ways to use them up as snacks for later or part of a meal for tomorrow. It can save you having to cook again. But make sure to store them safely in your fridge to eat at a later time. One more thing to think about is eating in season and locally sourced food when possible. These foods will have a lower carbon footprint as well as many other benefits. With careful planning and active thought given to the foods you buy and you eat, you can end up healthier, wealthier, and more sustainable. Now, what is there not to like about that?
Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. And well done to all the scientists. Amazing special effects that we saw there. Okay, we're joined now by some of the scientists you met on that video. Brian McGuinness is a plant pathologist who runs a plant clinic in the horticulture industry. Michael Gaffney is an entomologist who studies the behavior of insects, good and bad ones, so we can get better control of them. Carlos Alvarez is a research scientist who's currently looking at how we might use insects as a sustainable alternative to protein in our diet. Maria Hayes is a research scientist looking at natural products chemistry and seaweed. Carol Griffin is a research scientist looking at sensory analysis, and she has that sensory lab we saw. And Sinead McCarthy is a research officer looking at our behavior as consumers, trying to help us make better choices as we saw. And I was very guilty of some of the things you've called me out on there, Sinead. Your questions, please, in the Q&A section of Zoom. You can also use the hashtag #FestFarmFood. Now, Brian, let's start off with you. Amazing teleporting technology they have in Ashtown. I wasn't familiar you'd invested in that. Very good. Can you tell me, are there carnivorous plants in Ireland? Are there plants that eat meat?
Oh, a short answer, yes. And just to give a quick shout out to Jonathan Swift National School in Dunlavin. Hello, hiya guys. And to Miss Lucy in Mount Anville Primary School. There is carnivorous plants in Ireland. A lot of people don't know that. First of all, the easy way to see them would be to go to the National Botanic Gardens, I suppose. I think there's a lot for sale in garden centres now as well. But there's actually, there's about 11 carnivorous species of plant grown wild in Ireland. There's the sundews. There's three species of sundews, and they are absolutely beautiful plants. If you're ever walking through a bog, such as the one in Abbey Leaks, actually, which is very beautiful, they're very small red and green plants. And sundews actually have red tentacles with sticky glue on them. And if any kind of poor unsuspecting fly lands on it, it curls around the insect and actually digests it alive, which is not a very nice way to die, really. Wow. There's also the butterworts, which also stick flies to the plant, and they dissolve it as well. These are all horrible ways to die. And then there's the my favorite would be the bladderworts, which are free floating plants that float in kind of bog ponds. And if something swims past, they have a trap door, and the trap door opens and it sucks them in. And then again, they have a horrendous death as they're dissolved. There's one that was introduced in Roscommon in 1906, a pitcher plant, and that's kind of spread around as well. But they're worth seeking out, Jonathan.
Shout out, as you mentioned, Roscommon. Shout out to Maris in Athlone and Convent of Mercy in Roscommon. You're all very welcome. Get your questions into us in the Q&A section. Brian, another quick one for you. What's the most dangerous pathogen or virus? What's or disease that's to do with plants?
Oh, that's a good question. I suppose there's two sides to that. What would be the most dangerous to plants, and then what would be the most dangerous to people? Does anyone know what the most widely grown crop is in the world? Answers on a postcard.
Rice.
It's rice. So 50% of the world's population depends on rice as the main part of their diet. There's a rice disease called, this is a big word now, Mycorrhizals, which is very difficult to control because it mutates and adapts very quickly. It can kill a crop of rice in a couple of weeks. The one in Ireland that we're all very familiar with that caused the famine is Phytophthora infestans, and now that killed 1.5 million Irish people and literally changed the shape of the world. People emigrated all over the place. But the Mycorrhizals, which preys on rice, has killed many, many more people than that. So that's a really dangerous one. In terms of human health, there's a fungus called Fusarium graminearum, which it doesn't affect the crop. You still get the same amount from that crop, but once it's growing on the crop, it produces what's called mycotoxins. And mycotoxins can have a bad effect on human health. They can cause cancer. They're carcinogens.
Wow.
They type crops are rigorously checked. I think there's a couple of projects going on in here in Ashtown, Agritox, that are actually checking cereals for presence of mycotoxins in our residues department, which is straight up there. I think in Ireland, the most common and the most dangerous, Botrytis cinerea, which causes grey mold on a lot of different plants. And then one that's very topical, and I bet you lots of people out there have probably heard of this, is the Dieback disease, which is very, very current at the moment.
Yeah.
So you've got, have you heard of that, Jonathan?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Yeah, that's been in the news a lot, and it's caused by a fungus called Hymenoscyphus fraxinia, and that's having a devastating effect on our ash population. So ash is very important for both economically and culturally.
Yeah.
Burleys are made out of it.
Very good. Michael, tell me a little bit about this insect tower, because I was surprised to see it's so tall, and I don't know how exactly it works. I want to know more about that.
Okay, well, it's so tall because we get a predictable count of aphids at different heights. So aphids don't have very strong muscles. They actually only grow them for a small part of their life cycle, and they're not very strong. So they use those muscles to just get up off the ground, and then they go as high as possible because they're a bit like hand gliders. They can't flap their wings as such, so they kind of glide along. So they try to get up really high. So in order for us to measure when they're moving around, we need to sample up at that height. So the tower that was in the video was only 6 meters high. We have other towers that are double that height. They're just over 12 meters. And that gives us a kind of a predictable measurement of how they're moving around.
That's 6 stories or something. That's a pretty sizable tower.
It is, yeah, because insects will move around based on temperature at local level. So, you know, a field that's facing south might be a bit warmer than a field that's facing north. So the insects in the field that's south would move around and might go 1 or 2 meters up in the air. But we're kind of interested in kind of predictable patterns. So therefore, that's why we measure at such a big height.
What draws different insects to different plants? Is it scent? Is it color? Why would some plants be infected by pests and others not?
Yep, a lot of insects are tied to one group of plants, and particularly aphids, and that's why we've got. I think if you were to look at one insect species every minute, it would take you about 15 years to go through all the different insect species, and that's because and a lot of that is to do with a lot of insects are tied very closely to specific plants. So yes, there are smells that they use. Some insects use color. Some insects use the different patterns. So say for insects that infect cereal crops, it's not just that they see a field of green and they fly towards it. They see a field of green with patches of soil. Right. And it's that contrast that they actually fly towards. And then when they get closer, so they visually find the field, and when they get a little bit closer, yes, then they sense that it's a crop that's beneficial to them. Then they land on it and they take a feed. And it's at that point they decide, oh, is this something I can feed on? Then they take a little jump, they take another feed, and then they decide whether they're going to stay there or if they're going to fly off again.
Very good. I have a question for Carol, and this is from Clinstown. I think it's Clinstown National School. Carol says, this is for Carol, other than taste, which sense shapes people's perception on what is tasty in terms of food?
Well, if our sense of our vision, so if we look at a food and we don't like the idea of it, we won't even taste it. So we make that decision in microseconds. I don't know if anyone else is it a carvery or back before COVID? And I like to look at the food of what's on offer rather than just the list of what's up. So we make the decision based on vision most of the time.
Why do we like the sound of a crunch? It seems like when we eat an apple, we want that crunch out of it. If we're having biscuits or crisps, that if they don't do that, it's not very satisfying. Why is that?
Well, if you look at an apple, say you look at a green apple, lovely green, shiny apple, straight away you're immediately thinking, that's going to be white inside, it's going to be slightly sour, it's going to be juicy, I know exactly how it's going to taste. Or if you look at a red apple, it's unconscious. You're going to assume, okay, that's going to be slightly sweeter, it's not going to look as white. So you look at a biscuit and you expect. So your expectation level is at a certain level. And if you're disappointed at all, you're even more disappointed. So you have a perception of what's going to happen once you eat that food.
I have a question for Sinead from Sam. Is there a difference between the carbon footprint of goat's milk and cow's milk? You're muted there, Sinead. Yeah.
Hi, Sam, and thank you for that question. It's a great question. The short answer is yes, there would be a small difference in carbon footprint of the two milks because the goat is a smaller ruminant animal than a cow. But in saying that, there would be much lower production of goat's milk than there would be cow's milk.
So the efficiency isn't there, is that what you mean?
John?
There isn't as much efficiency because it's not
exactly, yeah. It's not produced as much as cow's milk, but just by virtue of being a smaller animal, it wouldn't have as big a footprint as cow's milk.
It's complicated, isn't it, to go into a supermarket and think about all the different things we need to think about. Will this food compost in my compost? Is it local? Is it good for me? Is it good for the environment? It's really tricky. When you showed us two different meals there, and I was a little bit confused. Why was the bolognese meal so much worse for the environment?
The bolognese had, I'd use the term higher carbon footprint rather than so much worse than the environment.
Right, okay.
Because ultimately it's the combination of foods in our diet as well as our entire lifestyle that has the impact on the environment. We see a higher carbon footprint associated with the bolognese because it is based on a beef bolognese. And red meat or ruminant meat will have a higher carbon footprint than non-ruminant meat or a vegetarian alternative. So that's why I use the quite dramatic contrast between a vegetarian pizza, so it was a vegetarian meal, if you like,
right,
versus a non-vegetarian meal. But so while we might get better footprint, we don't necessarily get a healthier dietary profile.
Very good. Carlos, I was grossed out by some of the insects that you were showing us, but someone clearly wasn't. They say, where can I get insects to eat?
So at the moment in Ireland, insects are not allowed to be commercialized or consumed because the insects falls into the novel food legislation. So in order to eat them, a producer or manufacturer, they have to apply they have to apply for permission to commercialize that to the European Union, and that needs to be granted. But maybe you can get some of those insects in a few countries in Europe. So for example, in the Netherlands, Belgium, or Switzerland. And at the moment, there are only 3 insect species that we can eat. And these are the crickets, locusts, and mealworms. So we saw before that there are millions of insects out there, but only 3 of them are allowed to be eaten now in Europe.
I know that, as you say, there's a big, wide range of different types of insects that people eat across the world, including scorpions and tarantulas and water bugs, these horrible, enormous cockroach-looking things. My question is, do they taste of anything? Because you didn't really talk too much about the flavor. Is there nothing nice about any of these insects to consume, or are we just interested in the protein?
No, the flavor is something to be considered as well. We have seen that we make decisions based on how the meat appears, but then if they are appealing to us, we try the meat and we need to consider the flavor as well. So we're very interested to see what's the flavor of the insects once you introduce that in a food formulation, because we're not very sure about this at the moment. So we will need scientists as Carol just to check what's the flavor of the final product. But I've tried insects before. But they put a lot of species on that, so you don't feel the real flavor of the insects.
Spicy.
The easy answer will be to say that they taste like chicken. But
I've had insects, none of them tasted like chicken. I wish.
No.
Maria, I'm very interested in your piece on seaweed. I'm wondering, would it be safe to eat seaweed that we see on the beach? Because I live in Monkstown in Dublin, where there's loads of seaweed. I'm wondering, can I just pick that up, bring it home, and dry it?
Well, that's a good question. You could chance it, but like it's a food, so it's subject to microbial contamination like other foods. So the best thing really would be to harvest it. The seaweed you see on the beach is storm cast seaweed, or, it's washed up. So normally for food, when it's used as a food or as a food ingredient, it will be processed and harvested in a food safe manner. Using HACCP and things like that. So the seaweed you see for sale in supermarkets, it undergoes the same stringent kind of regulations as any other food. So I wouldn't recommend it personally.
There's a lot of dogs,
Exactly.
a lot of people walk their dogs on the beach. So I'm not so sure that's a good idea. But if we brought it at home and we washed it and we cooked it and we dried it out, would it be safe then, or just still not a good idea?
Yeah, so seaweeds, they absorb a lot of things, So really in Ireland, we're blessed because we're an island, and especially on the west coast, the water is very clean. So really you need very clean water is where seaweed is grown, or from where you harvest it from. It can absorb heavy metals, for example, so they can be bad for your health. So really you should purchase it from reliable suppliers.
Maria, you're killing my cottage industry idea here. Okay, loads of questions. So I'm going to ask everyone if you can be a little bit tighter now, because we're trying to get through as many as possible. So Brian, I have a question for you. What is this is from Letterfrack National School in Galway, and hello also in Galway to St. Mary's College, Seamount College, and Laca National School in Tullamore. You're all very welcome, and thanks very much. Keep your questions coming in. Brian, your question is, what is the biggest carnivorous plant in the world?
Oh God, that's a good question. I don't actually know the name of it. I was recently in a I know it's very large. Oh God, the name escapes me right now. I can contact them directly to ask it, but it only flowers very, very rarely, and it has it's about 6 to 7 foot tall. It has very large petals, and it opens during the night. Every few years it opens up, and and then it dies after that. So it takes a lot of effort for the plant to actually produce these very large, sticky structures to catch moths, I guess, and insects that are flying around. The name of it escapes me now. Well, I'm sure it'll come back to me as soon as we hang up.
I think Letterfrack should get a little prize for stumping our scientists. That doesn't happen very often. Let's go to Carol. In theory, could you develop chocolate flavored vegetables? I like that question.
Oh, that's a lovely question. Thank you for that. I suppose it's more practical to do something with the vegetables and maybe coat them in chocolate, or have rather than growing a plant. Michael might back me up there, but I mean, strawberries dipped in chocolate is lovely. So you'd have the good cocoa and the strawberries. You could use the ingredients of dried vegetables to make really healthy snacks. So there's a lot of that going on at the moment. It could have a chocolate flavor in there.
Short answer, no, though. Is that what you're saying? You're disappointing a whole generation here. We have a question for Michael. What kind of insects commonly eat cabbage plants, and how damaging are they?
Well, lots of different insects eat cabbage plants, and they can be incredibly damaging. There's some flies that lay their eggs at the base of the plants, and their larvae hatch and they eat them. They're called cabbage root flies. They're incredibly damaging. They could wipe out an entire field at high levels. Aphids come in and they feed, but with aphids more so, it's viruses that they carry that cause the plants. And then we get some like invasive insects that fly in every summer, like diamondback moth, which are little moths that fly in, usually come in from Spain, the Balkan areas, and they fly in and they can destroy a brassica plant within a week. when they lay their eggs and their larvae hatch. So if you get in years where we get really high temperatures and those moths appear, they can be really challenging. But if it starts to rain, which it does so in Ireland, actually the rain helps keep them under control. So a lot of it is, we're depending on the weather a lot of the time.
Do you know, it's amazing to think about some of the distances these insects travel, considering how small they are and literally how little energy they consume and how they manage to travel from one continent to the next. Good morning, Carlos. Miss Burke from 5th class Spa National School, County Kerry, has a boy called Jake who would like to know, would insects be counted as vegetarian?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Would insects be counted as vegetarian? Would you count eating an insect? Could you be a vegetarian and eat insects?
I don't think so, because after all, insects are animals. So you are focused on a vegetarian diet. You are killing an animal to get the proteins out of them. So maybe if you are very strict with that, you cannot. If you are just strict with the mammals, maybe you can. But I think it's up to you. But in my opinion, they are still animals.
Okay, so that's a no there. I presume that's the question. I suppose another way of interpreting that is, are insects themselves vegetarians? And I suppose that the answer to that depends on the insect, right?
Yeah, that's right. It depends on the insect. But the ones we're looking at in here, for example, the most of them eat plants, vegetables, and crops. But we are looking to new diets that we can incorporate proteins from other animals so they can grow faster, they can grow bigger. So we will get better use of our resources.
Thanks, Carlos. Shout out to School Were in Rosslare and Good Counsel College in New Ross in Wexford. You're very welcome. Cavan St. Clair's College in Ballyjames Duff. Keep your questions coming in the Q&A tool under Zoom. We have one for Sinead. And Sinead, your question is, do you think oat milk will increase in production in Ireland? Do oats require a lot of herbicides or pesticides? I mean, I have a problem with the word oat milk.
Yeah.
You don't milk an oat.
Yeah, I think you can't actually use the term oat milk anymore, so it would possibly be oat juice. The term milk has been protected recently. I think it's unlikely that we'll see it increase in the short term. And there's also other considerations that you're not going to get from oat milk that you will get from dairy milk, like calcium and other bioactive health compounds that come in milk. The other thing, the really important thing to consider in changing the food supply, if we're to completely change from dairy cows to oats, let's say, for our milk, the land now has to be ploughed. We have to grow oats. The tractors have to travel across that land, and the land use changes. And that in itself has an environmental impact as well. So it's not just an easy swap from one to the other.
Another question for you from Billy in St. Joseph's, Rush. He says, isn't it more important to vote for policies that affect corporations, shops, food waste, carbon footprint than our own personal waste, CO2? And that's a interesting question. I said that this is a really tricky topic, figuring out what the best choice is. Should we be voting for with our wallets for the sort of products that are made by companies trying to make green efforts, or should we be thinking about our own effect on it?
I think it works both ways, and we have to do both. So every single thing that we do in our lifestyles, from what we eat, what we waste, to how we travel to school, travel to town, even if you have a pet dog or cat, it has a carbon footprint as well. So I think we should definitely opt for the policies that do have carbon and climate benefits, but also incorporate it into our own lives as well. At the minute, from a food perspective, it's hard to make the maybe lower carbon footprint choice because that type of labeling isn't necessarily available on food products. So until we know more about that, just do the best you can in every respect.
Carol, a question for you. Why is there a green light on in the booths in your sensory clinic where people were trying to taste and understand how they felt about a food? It seemed like they were under a green light and in individual booths. Why is that setup chosen?
Well, that's there so that if there's any tiny differences in the foods they were tasting visually, that takes that away. So then they're really just tasting, are there a difference in the three particular drinks that were in front of them? So that was an experiment where there was a reduction in the sugar in one of them, And we wanted to see, could people perceive that reduction? So there's lots and lots of work going on in product development to reduce sugar, salt, fat, but so that our perception of it is still the same.
Very good. Brian says, do plants communicate with each other and other species? Sorry, that's a question for Brian. Brian, do plants communicate with each other and other species?
That's a really good question. Yes is the answer. Plants can communicate in a few different ways, actually. And it can involve fungi as well. So first, plants communicate with each other using gases like ethylene. They can give off ethylene, which can send a stress response to other plants. So it sends the message, be on guard, the water's running out, or we're under attack from some kind of pest. But the one that most interests me will be how plants communicate with each other under the ground. So there's a network of fungi under the ground known as mycorrhizals. So mycorrhizals grow with the plants. So and mycorrhizals can produce mushrooms as well. But without mycorrhizals, we would have far fewer trees. And without trees, we would have far fewer mushrooms. They have a symbiotic relationship. So these fungi kind of grow in and around the roots of trees and plants, and they form a huge network. It's called the Wood Wide Web. And through this network, trees can actually communicate with each other. So one of the largest organisms in the world is a fungal network. It's 1,500 years old, and it's about the same area as the Phoenix Park. It's a fungus called Armillaria melia. And but yeah, so they depend on each other, so they can send kind of signals. Again, it's usually to do with stress or distress, to say watch out or being eaten and things like that. So yes, plants do communicate with each other all the time.
Maria, lots of people really wanting to harvest this seaweed. Another says, is there a kind of seaweed that's easy to recognize so we can dry and eat? I think we're warning people away from doing that for the moment. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you about tannins. I saw you mention that, and tannins I would associate with wine. Are they the same things, or are they different?
Well, no, they are. They're the tannins in seaweeds are only found in brown seaweeds, and they're called fluorotannins. But tannins originally came from the tanning industry, and they basically bind proteins. So they're used, that's why they're called tannins. So in brown seaweeds, they are only found in there, and they have health benefits, but they are the same, they're connected or a relative of tannins found in wine, which come from the oak barrels in which wine is stored. The tannins seep from the barrel into the wine, so they're not found in the grape, you know what I mean? It's usually from the wood and the casket in which the wine, a different topic, but yeah, they're connected, they're related to the plant or the brown fluorotannins, but like they have a different chemical structure, and they have different therefore different kind of beneficial effects or negative effects, because they can be anti-nutritional. As I said, they bind protein. So if you consume too many tannins, you're not going to absorb protein, which you obviously need for a healthy skin, hair, and a body,
Carlos, great question for you from Bridgetown College in Wexford. Hello to you. The second year class are watching. And they want to know, why don't we have many snail farms here? We've lots of grass and other plants that they can eat. Have you ever eaten snails, Carlos? And why don't we have snail farms?
Yeah, actually, I love snails. It's one of my favorite dishes. I really love them. But yeah, the face you have just said, Jonathan, that explains that maybe we don't have snails farms here in Ireland. I think it's not something that usually it's consumed in this country.
Yeah.
So maybe when the producers are looking for alternatives or opportunities for new markets, snails is not considered. But yeah, I mean, the environment and all the media we have in here, they are very good for snails growing on the snails farms. But I think there is a lack of market Maybe if you're looking for exportation, there will be an opportunity. But the main importer would be France and Spain and maybe Portugal, but they already have huge facilities. They have a very good optimum conditions for growing the snails. So, yeah.
Yeah, they don't need it. I once ate snails under the shadow of the Eiffel Tower in Paris in a beautiful little bistro. And I know, Carol, the environment is very much meant to lend us to appreciate food in that sort of setting. It's very romantic. It's beautiful. They were still gross. But I wanted to ask you, how much does the environment in which we eat affect how much we enjoy the food?
Well, could I just say, first of all, there are quite a few snail farms actually, Carlos, around in Ireland, and it's a growing one. So just, because it's quite inefficient, but it is very new to Ireland. It's very new. So then your environment, well, those people that you saw were in booths. So they were concentrating on the food to see, could they taste the differences? And a lot of assessments are done in booths to blank out noise and so that you can concentrate, but you react differently. So if you're having a couple of coffees in a coffee shop, you mightn't necessarily concentrate so much on the coffee. It'll be the aromas, the noise, the chat. So you're enjoying someone's company. And we know that if we eat by ourselves, we don't tend to enjoy our food as much as if we're eating with somebody else. So we can mimic those now. So we've got virtual reality glasses that put you in that cinema while you're testing that popcorn to see is there any difference than compared to a booth, or immersive rooms that put you in that tropical paradise when you're drinking that lovely cocktail.
Michael, the insects that we have in Ireland, could they be used to feed to animals? We want the protein. We like the way animals taste. Could we just give the animals the protein and then get the protein as it's been processed by the animal's body in a nice juicy steak?
So we can farm the insects that, black soldier fly, mealworms, Galeria that have kind of been crickets that have been put forward. But in order for it to be kind of financially feasible, and you need to do it in kind of a controlled environment. And we do have an insect farm, at least one in the country at the moment, who produce vast quantities of these insects. So, and most of them will actually survive on what we would consider to be waste material. So I think it's absolutely feasible that we would do it, but it'll probably be in a very controlled atmosphere, as opposed to maybe having a nice green field and crickets wandering about free range. I don't think that's the future, but absolutely in controlled environment, that's the way it's going to happen. And it is happening now.
We have a question for Brian, and the question is there any sign that you should look out for on plants that will tell you it's poisonous? That's from Quiva in Miss Moran's class in Mount Anvil, Dublin.
There's no single way to recognize that a plant is poisonous, really. And some of the most poisonous plants look quite tasty, and it's similar with some of the most poisonous mushrooms as well, look quite tasty. So I would say never try a plant unless you're 100% sure that you know what it is, because there are a lot of very, very poisonous plants and mushrooms out there that can cause serious damage, particularly to your liver. So there's no one single way to tell if a plant is poisonous, really.
It's a really good question, though.
It is a good question. It's a very good question. Yeah.
Another one for you, actually, Brian. I bought pink lady apples recently, says somebody, and there were lots of brown spots throughout the flesh. What causes this, and are they safe to eat?
Yes, they probably are safe to eat. I'll give you that. Pink ladies are a very, very nice variety of apple. That's my favorite variety, that and Granny Smith. But on the surface, if you see brown spots on the surface of an apple, it's usually a fungus called Venturia or apple scab. And that's generally okay to eat unless it's kind of very widespread. Little spots within the apple, probably most likely caused by shipping, kind of the apples being jostled around during shipping and things like that.
But I would say that's just the cells getting dying and bruising, isn't that what it is?
Yeah, it's just bruising. But if it's very widespread through it, and it looks kind of yucky, often your taste buds will will give you a warning that this should not be eating. But if it's the odd little spot in it, it's probably a physical kind of damage where it's been jostled about because they during shipping.
Okay.
Generally, if it's a kind of a wet spot in the middle, it might be maybe a bacterial type spotting. But they're probably okay to eat unless it's pretty widespread, and then you don't want it.
Okay, Sinead, question from Ballincarlo wants to know, is a vegetarian diet healthier than a non-vegetarian diet? Good question.
Great question. And I think even some of the slides earlier showed that it isn't necessarily. So if we compared the cola chocolate and margarita pizza to the bolognese cheese and milk, we saw there was actually higher calories in that particular meal. So it's not necessarily any one diet is better than the other, but it's the balance of what you eat and the choices that you make. And so you could be vegetarian and make very poor choices and eat lots of things from the top of the food pyramid and not necessarily eat a lot of fruit and vegetables. And that would be an unhealthy diet. So it's about getting the balance right and eating the correct proportion of foods.
Brian, lots of people have been asking this question. Is there a remedy for ash dieback yet? Have we found a solution to it?
Oh, that's a really great question. Whoever asked that, and fair play to you. It's at the moment there is no one particular remedy for ash dieback disease. Countries around Europe, like Lithuania and Denmark, have lost 90% of their ash, which is absolutely tragic. There are a number of projects going on to control it, though, and there's ways we can do it. We're looking for natural immunity in the ash population. There'll always be a natural immunity, and if we can find naturally immune ash plants, we can clone these plants, and we can increase the population that way. There's other ways of doing it as well. There are some ash trees that of kind of slightly different species that are immune to the disease. So ash dieback has come from Asia, worked its way across the world, and in its wake, it's left population. We've seen that there are some populations that are immune, like Fraxinia chinensis, and by crossing Fraxinia excelsior and Fraxinia chinensis, there is a possibility that you can end up with, for all intents and purposes, a very, very similar tree, but that it's immune to the disease. But at the moment, the way they deal with the disease, if it appears somewhere, is that they, well, initially what they used to do was chop down everything around it, but I don't think they're doing that anymore. They're kind of just monitoring now is the main way of controlling it. So if you see it spreading in a plantation or an area, to actually target your cutting down of the trees.
Yeah, it's a beautiful tree. So let's hope we manage to win the war on that one. Well, listen, thank you so much to all of our panelists today from Teagasc Ashtown Research Centre. Thank you very much to all of the Teagasc organisers behind the scenes. What you're seeing is put together by a bank of people that you haven't seen, but they've worked really hard to put this together and doing a great job. I really enjoyed the videos, so well done to you all. This was made possible by sponsorship from Science Foundation Ireland and Teagasc. And we'll be featuring all of the videos from the week and the live Zoom recordings on the Teagasc YouTube channel. Is in the Science Week playlist. We'll also have answers to all of the questions that we didn't get to in the chat in a Q&A document on the teagasc.ie website. Make sure to follow Festival of Farming and Food on social media. And if you want to be in chance to win a €50 all-for-one voucher, all you have to do is fill out the survey. You're going to be emailed and tell us about the event. We'd really appreciate your time to fill it out. Thank you so much. That's it from the live events here at the Festival of Farming and Food. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great Science Week.